Welcome to the Get Your Rocks Off podcast. I'm your host, Jake Sufnerowski, and I'm turning my computer screen down so I don't get reflection in my eyes, and also so I don't look at it, though that's a mistake because I need to know how long I've been going in this podcast. No, I don't. I'm just going to go until I'm done. If I don't go an hour, who the fuck cares? You know what? There's no rules anymore. That's what I'm learning about life, and I spent a lot of time thinking about what the fuck am I supposed to be doing? Because I'm doing weird and different things, and I love doing weird and different things, and life isn't supposed to be a straight fucking line. I was talking to a friend this afternoon, about what life is and what you're supposed to do in life and what your job is, and about how in previous generations we were taught, especially like our parents and our grandparents and the greatest generation and all that, everybody was taught that you're just supposed to have a job and be thankful to have a job and be lucky to have that job and just put your head down and go to work, right? And where I've been working recently up in Yellow Pine, there's a mine up there, and I've been talking to people who used to work in the mine. Their father worked in the mine, and it's like, can you fucking believe that? Speaking about not a straight line, you ever see mine tunnels? Jesus Christ, that's basically what Tom Sawyer and Becky Thatcher got caught and stuck in, and what Injun Joe died in because they got lost in these mine tunnels. But life isn't supposed to be a straight line. You're not supposed to pick one thing and do it forever, unless you're a doctor or a lawyer. And in which case, you're probably going to pull all your hair out, which is why most doctors and lawyers are bald, right? Everyone I know who's a lawyer went to law school, incurred an exceptional amount of debt, unless their parents paid for it. In which case, if your parents paid for everything your whole life, like, you don't even count as far as I'm concerned. Like, you go do whatever you want, do good things, do bad things, like, that's just like, you count, of course. And I have some friends whose parents have paid for their whole life, and do they count? Yeah, I guess. But not really, you know? I'm just going to say what's on my mind. I don't give a fuck. It's No Filter Friday, even though it's Monday and it's a Tuesday podcast. But, if you went to some sort of professional school like that, you came out with a fuck ton of debt, and you're going to work to pay off that debt forever, especially like law school, and medical school too, and you got to go through your internship. But more importantly than that, it's like, more importantly than the money and the debt you incurred was that, like, once you're told that's what you are, even if it's something you tell yourself, like, that's a difficult bag to break out of. And if you've worked your whole life and, like, I'm going to be a lawyer, I want to be a trial lawyer, I want to be a hedge fund merger and acquisition lawyer. Like, does anyone grow up thinking that? Probably nowadays, right? I want to be a tech lawyer. I want to be general counsel for Twitter or whatever the fuck you want to be. Like, then you become that, and then, like, how do you break out of that? I don't know. I'm just figuring out. The reason I bring all this up is because I'm breaking out of my shell. My self-imposed shell. I feel like I'm in Spinal Tap, right? And remember the scene where they all descended in their little pods, and Derek Smalls, the bass player, couldn't get out of his, and he was, like, stuck inside of his pod, and he was the retarded bass player who, like, couldn't get out, and they couldn't get it open until the song ended, and then the pods, like, took off, and the curtain went dark, and it's like, dude never got out of his pod, or he busted out at the very last second, and then couldn't get back in. And that's kind of a metaphor for life and what it is you're supposed to do. Nice Spinal Tap reference, right? I heard Gimme Some Money on the radio the other day. Literally the radio, the Sirius XM radio. And it reminded me of, like, just how fucking good that band was, that they went back and did songs from the bands that they were supposedly before Spinal Tap and, like, nailed all the sound and the essence. And Gimme Some Money was such a great parody, because it was a parody about how bands were becoming commercialized and corporatized and were looking for payoffs, and their whole take on it was just like, just give me some money. Well, I don't care, pound notes, loose change, bad checks, anything. Give me some money, give me some money. If you remember, that was when Ed Begley Jr. was their drummer too, when they show the little clip in the movie. But yeah, that's kind of a metaphor for, like, just being stuck in your situation, and then when you finally break out, you get scared and it's over, and you're trying to get back in, and then you can't get in. And it's like, what do we want life to be about? I'm working on that for myself. And the reason that I'm thinking about all this is because shows are back. Live music is back, baby. New York City is open. Dave Grohl opened it up with the Foo Fighters and Dave Chappelle singing Radiohead songs. And it's like, Jesus fucking Christ. Was that cool? I think? Maybe? No? It's hard to say. If people had fun, it's cool, right? That's the definition of cool to me nowadays. And I actually told someone recently that I was a big fan of Nickelback, and they did not believe me, and they confused them with Creed, and they are Nickelback, really? And I was like, yeah, Nickelback. And I kind of remember it was somewhere around like 2009 or 10, long after I started liking Nickelback. But I just had this revelation at a certain point. Like, I spent my whole life trying to figure out what was cool musically and what bands were cool. Were you cool if you listen to this? Were you cool if you listen to that? And then, certain point, I guess around like 11 years ago or something, I was like, it doesn't fucking matter what music you listen to. If you're listening to music and you like it, then that's cool. Like, there's some bands I still totally can't fucking get to this day that really bother me. Like, the sound of Pearl Jam bothers me. I don't like it. I don't like the Black Crowes for some reason. Something about those brothers. I just don't like them. But I don't care if you like them. And I don't care, like, I fucking hate James Taylor, man. I fucking hate him. I can't stand him. I hate Joni Mitchell. I can't stand the sound of her voice. I know she's a genius. And I know she used all these different tunings and has deep lyrics. And, like, I get it. She's innovative. She's cool. Doesn't mean I have to like it. It doesn't make me less cool for not liking it or cool for not liking it. If you say, like, I don't like Coldplay, that doesn't make me cool. It doesn't make you not cool if you like Coldplay. Right? Like, it doesn't fucking matter what you like. To me, it's more important that you like something. Like, if I say to someone, what kind of music do you like? And they're like, I like everything, or like anything. I just like all music. And you're like, that's not cool, man. Opinions are cool. Whether they're, to me, the right opinion or wrong opinion, they're cool. But music is back. The Foo Fighters brought it back to New York City. All fucking bets are off. Nobody seems to be requiring masks, requiring vaccinations. If you're under 5,000 seat venue, it's just like, yeah, whatever the fuck is going on. And I struggled with that for a while because I got some messages specifically about our Murphy's Law show. Murphy's Law is a hardcore punk band who played that Tompkins Square Park benefit that got all that, like, benefit. Just free outdoor show that got all this, like, weird attention on the internet, which is obviously not real life. But, like, people were really upset that back in April, Black and Blue Productions, Cousin Joe and those guys went and put on the show that was like Murphy's Law, Madball, John Joseph's Cro-Mag thing or whatever the fuck he calls it nowadays. And I think Wisdom in Chains played. And, like, people gave them a lot of shit for playing a show. This was before any restrictions had been lifted and it was outdoors. And they really, like, they could have just not said anything, right? That's, if you're ever attacked on the internet, even if it's on your own Facebook page, just move on. Like, fucking internet losers are like gremlins, right? You feed them after midnight and they turn into super monsters. And internet losers, I'm not even gonna call them trolls, they're just fucking losers. Internet losers, they only exist if you reply to them. If not, it's just a vacuum. It's just a one-person vacuum. But John and Cousin Joe and whoever else was wrapped up in that thing started, like, going on other people's podcasts and, you know, fucking masks are a hoax, vaccinations are a hoax, they're putting 5G in you, whatever the fuck they were talking about. And, like, people were just mad because it was just too soon. But now everything's out the window. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about anything. It actually, like, almost makes them look good and smart, like they were the seers in that situation. But we had a Murphy's Law show coming up August 12th, and I got a few messages from customers asking if we're requiring vaccines and/or masks, and, like, I didn't know how to reply. Because, like, how am I supposed to reply? I don't fucking know. I'm not a health expert. I'm not the mayor. I'm not Dr. Anthony Fauci, as much as I look like him and sound like him and have a brain just as big as him. But I'm none of those things, man, you know? I'm not a doctor, man. I'm not an official man, even though I am certified in CPR and first aid from the American Red Cross now. But, how was I supposed to answer these questions? I didn't want to answer them. So guess what? I didn't answer them. Someone still wants to know for our Schism Tool Tribute cruise what the deal is. And, like, none of these customers led me in the direction of what answer they were looking for in their question. And I got a lot of anxiety about it when I got asked these questions, because I'm like, I don't fucking know. Why are you asking me? But in the end, the answer is kind of like, I knew what the answer was, and I just didn't reply to these people. And the answer was, and still is, like, we're going to do whatever legal guidelines say we do. I'm not out here trying to make a political statement with rocks off. I do some of that myself on my own Twitter, and that's why nobody follows me on there. But like, we just put on shows, man. That's all we do. And if the government says it's safe to put on shows, then we're putting on shows. And if the government says you don't need a fucking vaccination, then you don't need a vaccination. Like, who am I to say that you need to be vaccinated? And who am I to say that you need to wear a mask? But the truth is, like, vaccines are readily available, especially in New York State. Like they were giving away Subarus to get a vaccine. I almost flew home to get a free Subaru. And, like, if you don't have a vaccine, that's on you, man. And I had that discussion with a friend, and they were like, well, what if someone who's not vaccinated comes on your boat and they get it from someone who was vaccinated but was carrying it, and then they go back home, and then they get their grandmother sick and she dies? And I'm like, well, why the fuck is grandma hanging out with an unvaccinated person, right? Like, fuck her, fuck him. They can all die as far as I'm concerned. Like, it's what I mean is it's not my fucking problem, and it's not my fucking interest, and it's of really no business to me whether this dude or girl and their grandma live or die or get vaccinated or don't get vaccinated. And at this point, like, if you're not vaccinated, like, I don't know what your problem is. Like, why not? Like, do you think Bill Gates is putting chips in your arm? Like, no, he's too busy poisoning the water supply of Africans and feeding them genetically modified food from Monsanto. And oddly enough, he's not the only fucking asshole. He's the only asshole billionaire who's not trying to take off into outer space, because he's trying to figure out how to actually rule the world, which is probably way more insidious, the fact that he isn't up in outer space. But, so we have some shows going on this year, right? We have the whole reason I bring this up is, like, we don't have many shows going on, and that's pretty much by design. And we have our first show this weekend. We have Electric Six, perennial Rock Soft favorites, Electric Six, guys who wrote and popularized the song Gay Bar and Danger High Voltage, and close personal friends of mine, I may add. Only because my old band Tragedy did a tour with them in the UK as their opening act, and then another in the US, and we became very tight. That was after I had already started working with them on the boat, and like many bands I work with, I had to twist arms to get Electric Six to play for the first time on the boat, which I think is in 2007. If they played pretty much every year since, because bands who play on it once tend to want to play on it again. And certain bands don't play it every year because they have, like, their circuit. They want to do Irving Plaza one year, or the Bowery Ballroom one year, or they want to play the Governor's Ball Festival or whatever. But, like, lots of bands that we have come back and play again and again. But we have Electric Six this week, this Saturday. I can't believe it. It snuck up on me. And I'm here to tell you, I don't give a fuck. I kind of don't. I'm not flying home for it. I'm not flying home for Murphy's Law. And in a sense, like, the whole idea of even having shows has been giving me a bit of agita. I kind of knew, like, I obviously know that the Electric Six show is happening, but until today, I think I posted about it on our Facebook and our Instagram one time, maybe on our Twitter. Sent out an email blast when the shows were quote-unquote rescheduled, like when we kind of re-announced them, because Electric Six was supposed to play last year, as was Murphy's Law, as was Schism, as was the Ship of Fools thing we're doing, as was Yarn. Basically, every show I have this year that's announced so far were shows that were scheduled in 2020, and I just, like, moved the date and put them back up on sale. And I was like, yeah, I guess they're going to happen. And, yeah, I don't give a fuck that they're happening, because I don't really care about being a concert promoter anymore. And that feels liberating to say. It feels almost as liberating to say that as it did to say, I was sexually abused as a child. I was suicidal. I was neglected by my parents. I had an evil mother who put really disgusting and terrifying thoughts into my head for most of my childhood. Like, it felt so good to say those things, and now I can say I don't care about being a concert promoter. I don't really care about rock and roll, to be honest. Not the way I used to. Like, my whole life, all I cared about was rock and roll and pro wrestling and, like, drugs and girls and that kind of thing. But really, it was, like, rock and roll. And, like, that's how I wanted to make a living. I started a mobile DJ business, DJing, like, weddings and birthday parties and my junior high dances when I was in junior high school. And, like, from there, I expanded that. And, like, then I started putting on shows. Then I started rapping and producing rap stuff and producing rap concerts to give myself a place to play. And I did a couple of punk shows. I played in a really shitty bands in junior high and like ninth grade that were terrible, but like all I wanted to do was figure out my way into this business. And that's literally all I cared about from the point where I was like 11 or 12 years old, like really 10, 11, when I first like figured out what rock and roll was, and I started getting my own records. And I got Van Halen's first album in 1983 when I was 10 years old, and I got Run DMC's first album, and that was like, as opposed to listening to my older sister's records, that was the music that I was like, this is it, man. This is what I'm going to do with my fucking life, and I'm going to figure out a way to do it. And I did. I put on all these weird shows. I ended up moving to LA and worked at Tower Records because I thought that was being in the music business. And then from there I moved to New York and I worked at a hip hop label for a little while called Tough City. And then I worked my way. I found a job at Wetlands and I started in the office as just a shit peon assistant going out, getting photocopies made and stuff like that. And then Larry made me his assistant. Then I became the publicist. Then they started letting me DJ. And then I started working a couple nights at the front door. And I started learning how to use the light board. And I started meeting bands and talking to bands. And I was so excited that I actually got to meet these artists. And eventually I became the booker of Wetlands. And then when that ended, I started Rocks Off. And I started that in 2002, the very beginning of 2002. I literally quit my job as talent buyer at the Knitting Factory on January 2nd or 3rd, 2002. Wetlands closed September 2001. The whole crazy story. It was supposed to close on the 15th. September 11th was our last night, because it was right next to the World Trade Center, just a few blocks away. So that day they closed us down early. And then I moved over. So my Wetlands was supposed to close on the 15th, which is a Saturday night. And then I was scheduled to start work on Monday, September 17th, 2001 at the Knitting Factory as the talent buyer. I went to work there for a few months. And then I was so depressed. I think that was my first ever real struggle with depression in a way that I knew what it was, as opposed to the low-level hum of depression I had had my whole life. But I was like, I cannot go back to this job after New Year's Eve. And I think I went in there on I was supposed to go back to work on January 2nd, and I showed up on the 3rd, and I quit. And that was like a dream of a lifetime job, because when Wetlands was closing, I just figured I wasn't qualified to do anything. I thought I was only qualified to book the Wetlands, would never be qualified to book another club or have another job in the music business. So I started putting out to agents and managers and people in the business that I knew. I was like, I want to be a tour manager. And because I was like, I just want to get out and see the world. And I hadn't really done much traveling up to that point because I was stuck working at Wetlands almost 7 days a week. And then I'd also worked at Coney Island High and just really, and started my own label. And I was just all I did was work. Went on a couple of trips, but nothing major. I was being a tour manager would be a great way to travel and see the world and really experience things. And I ended up getting one offer, and it was an offer to be the tour manager for Snoop. And someone at William Morris called me and was like, "We heard you're looking for a tour manager job. Snoop's looking for someone. Would you be interested in that?" And I was like, fuck no. Because at least I had the foresight at that point to be like, that's going to be a fucking nightmare. You need to be a super seasoned tour manager to deal with that shit. And that was going to involve getting people out of jail and bribing cops and just trying to wrangle a bunch of fucking hip-hop people. No way. Can you imagine what kind of entourage Snoop had in 2001? And a 26-year-old me, 27-year-old me was going to be fucking wrangling those dudes? I don't think so. No way. Not me. Not never. I'm not Mr. Captain tying knots. People need knots tied. They're not coming to me. Not Snoop Dogg. Not never. So I turned that down. Then I ended up getting a job at the Knitting Factory as the talent buyer, which the whole great story there, but I don't need to get into. I probably have in the past somewhere, maybe on this podcast. But I went into Michael Dorf's office, who was the owner at the Knitting Factory, on January 3rd, after just turning my phone off and refusing to answer any calls in the second, with him wondering why I wasn't at work. And I went in and I was like, "Hey dude, I got arrested on New Year's Eve." Totally made that up. And I was like, "I've been in the tombs until this morning. I went home, took a shower, and now I'm here to quit. I don't want to work here anymore." And he was like, "What?" And I was like, "I don't want to work here anymore." And he was like, You make us a lot of money. You've been doing such a great job in the short time you've been here." I was like, "Well, I'll continue to book shows, but I won't come to the office. I won't come to your meetings. I don't want to have anything to do with running this club and this business. It was just a big, huge pain in the butt. It was very corporatized. And he was like, yeah, hell yeah. And that's basically how Rocks Off started. You have Michael Dorf to thank, because then I started booking a ton of shows at the Knitting Factory. Basically, I'd run up their calendar, and all of a sudden was making more money than I was making as their talent buyer. It was pretty cool. Then I started doing shows at more and more places. And then I started the cruise, and I ended up starting Rocks Off, and Noah Chernin is the one who named Rocks Off. I was trying to come up with a name for it, and my friend Noah Chernin, my very good, dear friend Noah Chernin, was like, why don't you just call it Rocks Off, like the first song on Exile on Main Street? And I was like, yeah, great reference there. It's a euphemism for an orgasm. It was one of my favorite Primal Scream songs, Get Your Rocks Off, Get Your Rocks Off, Honey. Get Your Rocks Off, Get 'Em Off Downtown. That song was just called Rocks, though. It was on the Give Out But Don't Give Up album that followed their Screamadelica record. Give Out But Don't Give Up came out in spring of 94 while I was working at Tower Records. Never forget it. Great record. Jailbird, also a fucking great song on that record. So I started Rocks Off, and it started kind of as an accident. And like for the next 10 years, that's all I gave a fuck about. All I wanted to do every night was be at shows, be at clubs, see bands, figure out what bands were hot, who was doing what, put shows together, market shows, advertise shows, come up with flyer concepts, come up with cool bills, come up with tribute wars concepts where I would book multiple different tribute bands and create like dream concerts that you'd never be able to see nowadays. And that's all I cared about for a long time. And then at a certain point in the early 2010s, I kind of stopped caring. And Rocks Off was like very successful for a while. We started making a lot of money. And I ended up with 6 full-time employees for a while, and we had that big office on 44th Street and 9th Avenue. And then after a while, after my dad died, I really started. He died in 2007, 6, I don't know, 6, I think. And then after that, I started thinking to myself, like, what am I doing? Like, what do I enjoy about what I'm doing? Because my dad died. He worked for the federal government, for the Department of Rehabilitation, which is like a sub-department under the Department of Education, helping like vocational rehabilitation, helping handicapped people get job training, if they suffered an injury or a medical thing like a stroke, things like that, like helping people get back into the workforce. I guess that's the best as I can gather, because he never really talked much about it, but apparently he was good at it and was like the regional commissioner for the department. And but he didn't like his job. He certainly didn't like his job, because if he liked it, he would have told us about it more. But like, I heard like nothing about it. I would go to his office with him once a year for like take your kid to work day, and I had no fucking idea what he did. I would just sit around and color, and then he would always like, it'd end up becoming a half day, and then we'd go walk around Boston and get pizza or something, and we'd go home. But like, when my dad retired, he got cancer not long after. Probably had a lot to do with the stress of like having to live with my mother. I don't even mean that jokingly. I brought that up to my sister years later. I said to my sister, do you ever consider that like dad was like the healthiest guy we knew? And about a year after he retired, when he was forced to be in the house with just mom all day, every day, and my mother would drive him fucking crazy. He was like very stoic, never said much, but every now and then my mother would like needle him, and I'd hear him fucking explode, and it was one of the scariest things I've ever seen. And he would just like, he came home from work every day and would go work in his garden in the backyard and not talk to me, certainly. My sisters had grown up and had left the house by the time I was like, my oldest sister left the house by the time I was 10, the other one by the time I was 12, and by that time my dad was completely checked out. And so yeah, I kind of had the feeling that my mother stressed him out so bad that it created or exacerbated the cancer that was growing inside him. And I know that's really fucked up to say, but anyway, my dad lived this whole life just working, and he would just tell me, the thing he tried to instill in me was like, 99% of the work in this world is done by people who don't feel like doing it. So no matter how you feel, you got to get up and go to work, which I get. I get those words. I understand that. And I would see him do it. But I was like, Yeah, but if you can just play, then why should you work? Or why don't you combine work and play? Like, I never understood he never instilled in me why hard work was important, just told me that it was. And those are two hugely different things to instill in a child or anyone you're in charge of teaching or mentoring in any way. You gotta show people what you're talking about. You can't just say it. Like, you know, platitudes, right? You can't just come up with useless slogans and that you don't follow and aren't based on any sort of reality and expect them to change people's lives. So I never really understood what his version of hard work was about. And then he died not long after he retired. And like, what was the fucking point? Like, he was supposed to enjoy his retirement. And I think when I saw that, it snapped something inside me. And I still was loving doing what I did at that time. But then right after he died was when I started like really traveling and going on trips and being like, you know what, fuck it, YOLO, bro, you only live once. And I think it was subconscious, but looking back now, you can see those patterns and how it's established. And like around 2010, I had all these employees and I was like, what the fuck am I doing with all these employees? And I started to think like, what is my day? What do I do? And I realized I'm managing everybody else, and I'm like, I was still booking a lot of shows, but then Jess was coming up with doing all the advancing, and Steph was working on the marketing and the flyer designs, and Backyard Bill was doing tons of booking for me, and Drew and Bucky were doing all sorts of like flyer campaigns and organizing street teams. And then we had a big account with Live Nation and run all their street teams. And I was like, what the fuck do I really do, and what do I want to do? And then I kind of like looked at my books and I thought about it, and I was like, why don't I just go back to booking shows by myself? And I fired basically everybody, and I completely downsized the company. And I was like, why am I doing 500 shows a year and like not making any more money than I was when I was doing 100 shows a year? Like, that's just stupid. And that's the idea of a public company. You grow for your shareholders, and you gotta, scale and all these buzzwords for corporate work. And it's like, what the fuck is the point of all that if you're not, like, just do what you like, Like, that's one thing my dad would tell me is like, which didn't make any fucking sense because he didn't like his job, but he would say, like, you got to do something you like, because if you do something you like, then you'll never work a day in your life. But then when I went off and did things I liked, he was like, you need a steady job. Without a steady job, you're nothing. You'll never have good credit score and all that. And I was like, what are you talking about? And I learned after he got sick that he was proud of me, and that he was proud that I had gone off and done things my own way, and that he wished that he could have lived his life more like me, but was too scared and was trying to provide for a family because he fucking married my mother and kept getting her pregnant. And but like, so in the 2010s, I kind of seriously downsized things. We gave up our office, and that's when we moved into the office boat on East 23rd Street, where me and Marco Polo and the Empire Cruises guys all bought a houseboat and turned it into an office boat. And we worked on there for a few years. I think it was actually 2009. And I think I kept just Shane. Did I have Shane? No, Shane wasn't working for me then. Who came? Jess came for a little bit. And then I had Steph, this British girl, for a little bit. And then Noah came to work with me for a little bit. And that's where I met Karina. And right through Karina, we met Shane. I lose track. But we worked on this office boat. And it was just like me and one other person for the most part. Like one other full-timer and an intern here and there. And I just got back to the down and dirty of doing shows. And just like doing my own shows and like staying on top of everything and doing the marketing and all that stuff myself. And like I would hand off some of the advancing and some of the social media stuff and some of the logistics stuff. But I was still like loving it. And then at a certain point, I don't know, I also at that point I went full on into boat shows and started booking less club shows. So it was like, club shows were they were becoming much thinner margins because more venues are opening and there was more competition, and the boats were like my own thing. So I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to do boat shows, and then I'm going to close the business down basically from fucking Halloween until, the like March or April every year. And like we typically do the first cruise of the season is April 20th or that weekend with the High Times Cannabis Cup Band, big 420 party. Doing it next year with Dub as a Weapon. Already have it booked and locked in. I think it's April 23rd is the Saturday of that weekend next year. But So then I set it up so that I could just travel. And then I started traveling, and I was taking off to Europe and Asia and just like really getting out there for a couple months at a time. And then I had that whole thing with Botswana where I went and spent 3 months in Botswana. And I was just like, dude, this is what life is about. And the more I realized what life was about, the less I cared about rock and roll. And I can really trace a lot of it to when I came back from Botswana, and I've heard a lot of people say this. When you go and travel extensively in sub-Saharan Africa and then come back to the first world, a lot of people have had readjustment issues and depression issues, and I fucking got them super hard. And I didn't know what was happening at the time, but I talked to some people. I ran into my friend's mother, who was like a she's married to a philosopher and is a professor at Columbia, head of the French department. And she was like, she told me the whole story. She was like, I've had a lot of students who've gone over to sub-Saharan Africa, come back, and not been able to readjust and gotten into a real funk. And when I came back, something had changed, and I literally didn't give a fuck anymore. I didn't give a fuck about shows. And that was in fall of 2012 into spring of 2013 that I spent my first time over there. Then I left, came back to New York, started booking some shows, went back to Botswana a bunch of times over the next 2 years, and spent a lot of time there, and built a library, raised a bunch of money, built a gazebo that was in technically our yard. My girlfriend at the time, she was in the Peace Corps and had gotten sent there. That's what was the impetus for me to go there. And but I built this big gazebo that I invite the community to come use, and I built it by hand with no tools, no power tools, just like a shovel and a screwdriver and like a handsaw, and like mixing cement by myself. And if you try to dig a hole in the fucking desert, it's not as easy as Joe Pesci makes it look in Goodfellas and Casino especially, which is set in the desert. And it's fucking difficult. It's a lot of hard work, especially when it's 115 degrees and there's zero shade. I'm talking zero, like barely any trees out there. And when I came back from that, I just really stopped giving a fuck, and it led into a real depressive funk for me. And that's what led me to moving to London, because in July of 2014, I went to London for 10 days to go see a bunch of shows. It was such a fucking great run of shows. I was going to the Sonosphere Festival because the Bronx were playing. Sonosphere was it was on the grounds of Nebworth, which was Led Zeppelin's famous final concert, but also what they called Monsters of Rock back in the day, was that festival. And then they didn't have the rights to use that name, so they called it Sonosphere, but it was like one of the big, massive UK festivals. So I had wanted to go to that, and the Bronx were playing, so I called them, and I was like, can I come as like one of your crew members and actually show up there with you and get the full all-access backstage pass, not just some VIP thing? And they were like, sure. And that was amazing. I ended up singing the song Shitty Future with them during that show, which was fucking cool because I had left my Bee Gees band by that time, Tragedy, so I never got, we never got to play a huge, massive festival, so I kind of got to do that with the Bronx. And during that run, I saw Dolly Parton in Nottingham. I saw Jack White in London at the Hammersmith Apollo, and got to watch the whole show from the soundboard and talk to a sound lady because my friend was his merch guy at the time. And I went to see Black Sabbath in fucking Hyde Park. It was like Black Sabbath, Soundgarden, Motorhead, Faith No More, all together in Hyde Park. And saw Government Mule at the Brooklyn Bowl over there, and that's how I got the job at the Brooklyn Bowl. I went there and I told Peter Shapiro, I texted him, who's the old owner of Wetlands and owner of Brooklyn Bowl, and I was like, hey dude, you got a great venue here. Why don't you have any great shows though? And he was like, we're having a really hard time. We're struggling. It's different in London. We didn't anticipate how hard it would be. We need someone like you over here. If you would move here, I'd hire you in a second. And I turned to my friend Rich Jones, who was sitting across from me. So I didn't turn to him. I just looked at him, and I was like, hey, how much do you need to live comfortably in London? And he told me, and I immediately texted Peter. I was like, I need to take home pay of this much money every month. And he was like, that's a lot. And I was like, yeah, I know. And we got close to it, and I moved to London. And the whole reason I moved to London, which I don't tell people, was that I had fucking lost all the passion for running Rocks Off. And I haven't said that out loud before. I knew it, but I told people I was looking for a different challenge. Rocks Off was running itself, but honestly, I didn't care if Rocks Off lived or died at that point. I only cared in that it was kind of my baby, and I left it to Shane and Karina, and they did a good enough job with it. Good enough. I was really hoping that since they were kids, they would do more booking and take ownership of it. And Karina more so than Shane took ownership, but like neither of them ever really like they just didn't care to do booking. And like the only thing that makes you a good concert promoter, or the number one thing, is booking shows and getting relationships with artists and considering them, getting them to play at your venue instead of somebody else's, and taking good care of them and all that. But like if you can't take care of an artist if you can't get them to play. So I was just over the booking, and I learned, I talked about this on the episode about everything you need to know about the music business, or how the music business really works. That episode I did a few months ago. Most artists, they don't give a fuck where they play now. They don't know. They let their people deal with it. And that's the biggest change in the music business as far as how much I liked it. Like, bands used to make decisions for themselves and tell their agents what they wanted to do and tell their managers. And nowadays, managers and agents kind of control most of it. And like, I have so many bands that are like, oh, we've always wanted to play the Rocks Off Cruise. Why didn't you? Our managers never booked us there. It's like, well, you gotta fucking tell them, you know? And there's this like hard, fast rule that's developed over the years that like, if an agent or manager finds out I'm talking to the band directly about where they're going to play, and like that I want them to play here, and especially if I tell them you're getting fucked on your deal over there, but your manager's just doing it because he's friends with the guy. Dude, they hate that. But they hate any mingling between the artist and the promoter at all, that's really the whole reason I got into the business. I still do tons of it, and it still works for me, and there's a lot of bands that have gone through 10 different agents who I still work with because we only deal directly. H2O is one of those. We have shows coming up with H2O that I'm really thrilled about. You know, my friend Toby Morrison, like, I've been doing their shows forever, and they've gone through multiple agents, and then now I don't even deal with their agents. Like, they have this guy named Brad now who pretty much don't talk to him at all. We tried to talk a couple times, and he tried to tell the band they should work with another promoter. I found out. I was like, I'm not talking to him. And before them, they had this agent, Matt. I'm not using last names. That's on purpose. But they had this agent, Matt, who just stayed out of the way for like 8 years. And like, I would just deal with Toby and Adam. And then Matt would send a contract and I wouldn't sign it. And then he'd take a commission and it was fine. And then when they got this new guy, Brad, I was like, hey, this is the way it works. This is the way it's always worked. I'm not talking to Brad. Like, he's a dick. He tried to snake me. And I'm just not going to talk to him. Like, it wasn't like high school, junior high shit. Like, why can't you get along? It's like, you tried to fuck me. I will not trust you. And things have gone much smoother since then when I just went back to dealing with the band and we have these shows. And so I just like stopped caring. And I think having to pretend to care about something you don't care about is what drives you crazy. It's certainly what drove me crazy. Probably what drives a lot of people crazy about being at jobs that they hate and that they don't want to be in. And so a big part of I moved to London because I was thinking that maybe if I'm not the guy in charge of everything, it would make things easier for me. And like, I want to work for a big team. And then I got to London and the team was all screwy and I fired everybody. And then me and Idris, who was the general manager, we just basically fired everybody that Peter had like allowed to be hired in London. He had hired this first GM who sucked, so he sent Idris over, then sent me over to take over with the talent buyer, and then we just cleaned house and rehired everybody. And then I was like, wait a minute, I'm running this whole fucking business. I didn't want to run a business. I wanted to be just the guy who booked the shows. I didn't want to fucking oversee everybody else. That's not what I was here for. So then I got bummed out about that, and I was like, what the fuck? Like, And then at some point then I realized too, like, I'm never going to have a job where I don't like kind of take over everything. Like, that's all I know how to do. So I came back to New York, not with my tail between my legs, but I came back to New York and I was like, all right, well, I guess I go back to running Rocks Off. And 2017, I was still kind of fucking around. 2018, we put together a fucking bananas season with like Dean Ween, Yola Tango, George Clinton, Parliament Funkadelic, like Parquet Courts, like all these good bands, and everything was fucking awesome, and I still didn't give a fuck, and I was still spiraling into depression. So at the end of 2018 season, I was like, I hate this. Like, I get no joy from this. And the money didn't even bring me joy, because what was I going to do with the money? Who cares? I didn't want anything, and I've said that in previous podcasts. Like, the only thing I wanted maybe was like to buy a house, and I bought a really nice motorcycle, and like that's all I wanted. And I had a ton of money, and none of it made me happy. So in 2018, I went out to LA. I bought that motorcycle, and I'd taken a job that summer too, thinking that might lead to something, I took a job with a billionaire who had a vanity project band in New York City, and I signed a tight NDA, and I lasted 104 days with that guy, and he was paying me $250,000 a year. That was my salary, on top of all the Rocks Off stuff, and I just was getting those checks and laughing. But this guy was such a big fucking jerk. That's the only word for him. He's a jerk. Very Donald Trumpy jerk. He's smarter than Donald Trump, definitely, but also an idiot, and just a jerk. And that made me miserable, and it really made me realize, like, I can never go work for somebody else. Because when I had my job interview with this guy, he was like, how do you see my band? How do you think you can help my band? And I laid it all out. I was like, this is what we need to do if you want your band to have any chance of success. He was like, I like it. Yeah, I like it. And he actually called to offer me the job a few days later, and he had offered me $125,000 right there in that meeting. He's like, so the job pays $125,000, and I just kind of looked at him, and then I was like, all right, if you say that's what it pays. I was like, he's like, are we in business together? That's what he said. And I was like, let me take the weekend, let me listen to your music some more and really think, I want to make sure that I think that I can do this job properly for you. I'm not going to take it right now. Give me some time. And he's like, I'll call you on Monday. And of course he called me on Monday. And he's like, I'm about to get on the jet, take it off for the weekend with my kids or whatever the fuck. It was like, I think it was 4th of July or something. And, I'm going was he going to Wyoming? Was he going to Idaho? He's going somewhere with Irving Azoff. They were meeting up on their private jets and they take their family fucking fly fishing or something. Might have been Idaho. That would be very funny. But, he's like, so are we in business? This was a few days later. And I was like, well, yeah, I thought about it and I think I can do this job with everything I told you. And I have some new ideas, but if you're willing to do the things that I said that we would need to do to make your band successful, yeah, I'll take this job. And he was like, yeah, okay, well, we're all set with the money. We went over that. And I was like, well, you went over the money, but I didn't agree to that. And he was like, what? And I was like, you said it pays $125,000. And he was like, yeah. And I was like, I'm going to need $250,000. And he paused and he was like, that's a big number. And I was like, well, it is a big number, but if you want my time and focus and attention, that's what it's going to cost you. And he was like, all right, let's do it. All right, well, fucking so-and-so is going to send you the paperwork. And they sent me all this stuff to sign. And I signed it. And I was like, holy shit. Knowing I had just made a deal with the devil, but also knowing, man, if I can fucking do this and make this billionaire's band matter and count, and even in a small way, because the band had been a laughing stock that nobody cared about and just literally laughed about it. I was like, if I could actually make this work in the littlest way, it could lead to a lot more opportunities. So I'm going to do it. It wasn't really about the money because I had plenty of money at that time. And so I started doing it and it turned into a fucking nightmare and it drove me crazy. And I was already on the verge of being suicidal. I had already kind of at that point figured out I don't have much more time left. If I don't figure out something to do in my life that's going to fulfill me. So I kind of thought that might be a step in the right direction. I knew the job was going to suck and I knew he wasn't going to be fun to work for. And everybody knows this guy is just bad news. He's got one of the worst reputations in the world, not just the business. He doesn't even work in the music business, really, technically, kind of, tangentially. But that went south. It didn't last long. We had a fucking great blow up. I went out to, earlier in 2018 in the summer, I'd gone out to LA, rode bikes with Jorma, motorcycles, had a nasty crash in Yosemite. And I was actually limping when I went to his meeting with him, and my left leg was still covered in road rash when I went for our first meeting, and I didn't, I took fucking 8 Advil or something right before the meeting, and I wore a long shirt and long pants, even though it was in June and it was super hot in New York. And I walked in there straight-legged. I did not limp at all, or straight strutted in, because I didn't want to explain that I'd just been in a bad motorcycle accident. So I just gritted my teeth and sat down, and then had most of the meeting sitting, and then I got up and walked out. As soon as I walked out the door, I started limping again because I was in so much pain. But put on a brave face, and then as things were going south, and I really was like, this job sucks. I know this isn't going to last long. I flew out to LA. I had gone out for something else and went riding again with Jorm. I rode the same bike. I went for my friend's birthday party, my friend Jono's birthday party, and I went riding with Jorma, and I rode the same bike that I had crashed that June in Yosemite, and we ended up, we started in Silver Lake, and then we went all the way across Mulholland Drive, and then we ended up coming out at the very end of Mulholland onto the Pacific Coast Highway, drove down the Pacific Coast Highway, then rode back all the way across Sunset, went to Jumbo's Clown Room, which is a strip bar on the far east of Sunset Boulevard or Hollywood Boulevard. And then I got home from that trip and I was like, I need to buy a motorcycle. Like, I haven't owned one of my own since the one I shipped to London got stolen, the hot pink Ducati called the Street Fucker. And I was like, I need my own motorcycle. So I was like, fuck it, I'm going to go get my own motorcycle. And the one I found happened to be in LA. So I flew back out to LA, bought the motorcycle, was going to chill there for like a long weekend and just ride it everywhere. And that's when I got the call. And the call was his secretary called and said, hey, so-and-so, his name, needs to see you in the office today. I was like, well, that's not going to happen. I said I'm in Boston visiting my mother. And I lied because I had just been in California a couple weeks before, and I didn't want to tell him that I had flown back out there. But even when I had been out there the trip before, what are you doing in California? I was like, I'm fucking meeting with the people you told me to meet with. And I told you when I took this job it was going to require a lot of travel. I didn't even bill you for the fucking flight. So I'll be wherever the fuck I want, you know? And I said it to him like that. Not exactly that sharply, but pretty damn close. And he was like, oh, whoa. And in that trip a couple weeks before, we had gotten into it too. Because I was like, you're not fucking like, you said yes to everything I said in our meeting, and now you don't want to do any of these things. Like, what am I supposed to do? You just want to do what you want to do, but doing what you wanted to do got you to this place where you needed to hire me. So what am I even doing here? And I got him to back down. Okay, we're going to do what you said. We're going to try it your way. If it doesn't work, though, you're in big fucking trouble. And so that day, he, like, had his secretary call me. I was like, I'm in Boston. She's like, all right, hang on. Get put on hold for a couple minutes. He picks up the phone and just, what the fuck are you doing in Boston? I was like, what the fuck does it matter where I am? You're supposed to be working for me. I am working for you. I'm just visiting my mother. She's sick. You need to get your ass here tomorrow. I was like, I'm not going to be there tomorrow. I'm in Boston. I'll be back in New York on Tuesday. And then just went back and forth a few times, and he started yelling at me, and I just snapped. And I remember he said, what did he say? He was like, you can't talk to me that way. I'm your boss. And I was like, you're not my fucking boss. We're partners. That's what a manager of a band does. We're partners. I sign your paychecks. I don't need your fucking paychecks. I don't care about your paychecks. And now I was saying it like this to him because I really didn't give a fuck. I knew I was about to quit the job. And, he kept laying in like, I can't believe you're talking to me like this. And he said at one point, if you were here in front of me, I'd put my hands around your throat and I'd strangle you. I'd say, you fucking try to touch me if I was right there in front of me. I'd punch you in the fucking face so hard your heart would fucking stop, dude, because he had heart issues. And I was really fucking letting him have it. And he's like, you don't talk to me like this. He had very serious anger management issues, too. And I was like, I'll talk to you any fucking way I want. Not as long as you work for me. And I was like, oh, well, guess what? I don't fucking work for you then. I quit, dude. I don't give a fuck. I don't care. And then the conversation finally ended, and I laid out more and more. I'm like, every fucking thing I've asked you to do, you fucking wishy-washy. You won't commit. You won't pull the trigger on anything. You won't let me spend money. You, like, literally won't let me do anything, and then you're asked why you're not doing anything, why nothing's happening with the band. And the few things we did do were just such disasters because he made me do them his way, and it was a fucking nightmare. So anyway, I flew back to New York the following Monday, and then I went to his office on Tuesday, and oh my God, it's this huge corner office in Midtown, and I get up there. He makes me wait like an hour and a half, and I knew there was no one in the office because his secretary told me. He's like, he'll be ready in a minute. And after like half an hour, I was like, who's he in there with? She's like, no one. I don't know what the fucking holdup is. And she gave me the look like, I know what the holdup is. He's making you wait. So I'm sure he was on some phone calls, playing Candy Crush, which I caught him doing tons of times when I'd come into his office for a meeting. He'd be playing Candy Crush. Not on his phone, but on his big fucking widescreen computer. That's how, this guy didn't know what the fuck he was doing. And I go in there and he never shut the door behind him. He always wanted his secretary to like be within line of sight and earshot. And I went in there, and he shut the door behind him, and I was like, oh, boy, we're actually going to have a fist fight. This is going to be hilarious, because I'm going to kick this guy's fucking ass. And he fucking shut the door and very calmly walked behind his desk and sat down and said, Jake, I don't think this is going to work out between us. And I was like, yeah, Jim, I've been having the same thoughts. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I just don't think I'm the guy to be managing your band. And he was like, I gotta say, you're a good guy. People like you. People really like you. Everyone in my band likes you. Everyone I talk to, they really like you. But I just don't think you're meant to be managing my band. And I was like, you know what? I think you're right. I appreciate you saying that. I think I have a lot of good ideas, and I just don't think they mesh with your band. And he was like, well, all right. So that's that, huh? And I'm like, yeah, that's that, I guess that's that. And he was like, well, what do you need from me? And I was like, and I know what he meant. He meant, like, what do I need for severance pay and all that? And I was like, I don't really need anything for you, sir. I'm still, like, you paid me well. It was, I feel like everything was fair. You paid me well, and I don't need anything. And I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go home today, and I'm going to type up an email with everything I've been working on, everyone I've been talking to, all their contact info. I'll send it to you and your secretaries, and, you can just take the reins from here. Like, we're good. We're straight. And he was like, this was a Tuesday, and he's like, I tell you what, you send me that email. I'll pay you through the end of next week. We'll call it even. And I was like, all right, sir, that's great. So I fucking walk out of the office, shook his hand, walked out of the office, got in the elevator, went downstairs, literally walked home from Midtown to my house where I had already drafted that email. Got home, just fucking hit send, and never heard from the guy since. Heard a couple times from his assistant and then his new manager asking for some info. And after a couple of times of hearing from the new manager, I was like, I sent you all the info. Like, there's literally nothing else I have for you. Don't ever call me again. And I said it's very slightly nicer than that, but not much. And, I got my paycheck, and then I flew right back to L.A., where my motorcycle was, and where my boy had said you could live out here, and I just started riding, and that's when the real funk set in, because I was like, I don't have any joy from the cruise season. Flying to London, living in London, trying to run somebody else's company didn't work. Managing another act that had unlimited capital didn't work. What the fuck am I doing? And my boy, whose house I stayed at, was like, why don't you just live out here for the winter? You can, like, you book your cruise series for next year and ride your motorcycle around. I was like, that's great. And all I cared to do was ride my motorcycle around. And then it was that spring of 2019 when I went to that fucking, what was that, Tony Robbins seminar, and got the news that Dick Dale died, and boom. Then that's when I was like, I'm killing myself. Like, I was already pretty sure I was going to do it and thinking about it, but right at that moment, that's when it was like, okay, now it's definite. I am killing myself, and I'm going to do it by July 4th. And then I ended up going to, like, you've heard this story before, right? I'm not going to go into the whole suicidal thing. I don't want to bring people down. Just last night I was talking to a friend about how I can talk about it. I can talk about it so clinically, devoid of any sort of emotion about who I was and how I was acting then, because I'm over it. It's different. I don't have those feelings anymore. I haven't conquered it, but I've reined it in, and I understand what led me there, and I understand how to stay away from it. So I don't sit and cry and think, like, I can't believe I was trying to kill myself. Every now and then it's more tears of joy that I have that are like, I can't believe I've gotten this far, but I can look at it and it's distanced from who I am now. But when I went through my treatment, and during all that mess, I was still continuing to book shows. Even after I was sure I was committing suicide, I was still booking shows. We booked, like, Gorilla Biscuits on the boat, and I think we had Sick of It All and some other stuff, and I was still booking shows, and I booked Insane Clown Posse for their Christmas show and all this, and I was like, I was fucking going, and it was happening. I was booking shows, but I was also going to die at the same time, and showed someone a picture yesterday of me in Jackson, Wyoming, right in the middle of all that, and I'm smiling, and I was like, see how I'm smiling in this picture? I wanted to kill myself then. I knew I was going to kill myself, But I didn't want to kill myself when I was in the middle of Jackson, Wyoming. I wanted to kill myself that night at the hotel room when I went to go to bed, and I had drank 2 beers that night and couldn't even drink more because I couldn't find any joy. Couldn't even find joy in alcohol. Couldn't even get fucked up. Couldn't even like party. It was like as soon as the sun went down, my brain switched, right? As long as I was out in nature and having fun and riding my motorcycle and seeing things, I was like ticking off a bucket list of things I wanted to do before I killed myself. And then I ended up going into treatment, and I came out of treatment, and I was like, I got to book shows again. So I started booking shows, and I started booking things for 2020, but I wasn't super stoked on it, but I was still working on it because I was like, this is the only way I have to make a living. And as I said on the Toby's podcast, I had given all my money away or blown it, and just like my back was against the wall, so I had to book shows. And here I am now, cut to a year and change after the pandemic, and my season is starting again, and I don't give a fuck. And it's not depression that makes me don't give a fuck. I just don't give a fuck. I don't want to be in the music business. I don't want to book shows. What business do I want to be in? I don't know. I want to be a writer. I want to be a painter. I want to maybe be an adventure guide for motorcycle trips. If anyone wants to come take a motorcycle trip through Idaho, call me up. Hire me as a tour guide. I'll fucking find a place to rent us bikes, and I'll take you on some of the most beautiful roads you've ever seen in your life. That's the kind of shit I want to do. And it turns out I want to be a bartender in a place like Yellow Pine, which I just went and did this past weekend, and it was fucking awesome. And the whole reason I even went there and asked the lady if I could work there a few weeks ago was because I want to find a way to move to Yellow Pine, population 32. And I don't want to be the person I created myself to be. And, you know, so much of my identity is wrapped up in being Jake Roxoff. And to the point where that's my name, you know? Like, I'm not Jake Sufnerowski anymore. To a lot of people, I'm Jake Roxoff. I grabbed my friend's phone yesterday. A friend came out here to visit. She came out here to visit the people I rent this place from. And she's an old friend of mine. She's married to... her husband is a friend of mine. An older friend of mine. But I've known her for 15 years. And she brought her 11-year-old daughter. And we all had dinner last night and then coffee and treats this morning. And she handed me, I had sent her a text of a picture we all took of each other. And then she handed me her phone to show me something else. And right as I sent the text and I looked, and on her phone, my name shows up as Jake Roxoff because that's my identity. And that's fine because I feel like I've kind of built Roxoff into something that's more than just the shows. It's the name of my blog, and it is kind of my identity. And like, we've done film festivals and do a lot of t-shirts, and I want to continue to sell t-shirts and, you know, masks or whatever. And I'll probably, when I become a motorcycle adventure guide, which is not as far away as I might have made it seem right there, because the website's launching soon, but it's roxoffadventures.com, and I'll be Jake Roxoff for that. And like, I think that is my identity, but I don't want my identity to be the guy who books shows, because I really don't care about shows, and I don't really want to go see shows. People have said, like, are you psyched to go back to shows? It's like, not really. I saw live music a couple of weeks ago up here, the Delvon Lamar Organ Trio, and it was cool. And I had a good time, and it was nice to see music again, but I'm in no rush to travel to see shows. Like, I saw Sturgill Simpson was playing like 5 nights at Webster Hall, and I saw Sturgill play in London at Shepherd's Bush Empire, where Tragedy played once, I will point out. It's like their Beacon Theater. And I fucking loved that show. And then I saw him at Radio City, and I fucking loved it. And I love Sturgill's new album. And I was like, I had a bit of like, I want to go to that show. But I was like, how badly do I want to go? Badly enough to fly back to New York? No. I don't want to live in New York. I don't want to come to New York. And I just don't want to go I don't want to get on planes anymore. I did so much of that. I don't want to book shows. I don't want to be the guy running the shows. I just want to, like, I want to do something different. And I keep dancing around saying that to people who call me and are like, when are you going to come back to New York? Well, I'll be back in October. I'm supposed to come back in October to see, we're going to have 2 nights of H2O. I think we're going to have Frank Turner on the boat the night before that. We haven't announced that yet, but it looks like a done deal. So I'll do Frank Turner on Friday, H2O Saturday, H2O Sunday. Then I'm supposed to stay in New York for a week and then see the Pie Tasters the following Saturday. Then stay in New York for another week and go to my friend Dave Blend's wedding. And it's like, the closer that gets, the more I realize I'm not doing any of that. I'm going to go out, I'll do the Frank Turner boat, and I'll do the H2O shows, and I'll clean my storage locker out. And I had thought, like, I'll go up to Noah's house for a week. And Then I'll come back for the Pie Tasters cruise, and then I'll go to, then I'll go down to the Jersey Shore and hang out with DJ and Swank and Castillo and see my friends down there, and then come back for Blend's wedding, and then I'll fly home, and it's like, I am home. And for years, I was traveling around the world, always running, always like supposedly in search of something, but I was running away from things. And it's not New York I don't want to be in. It's the place that I don't call home that I don't want to be in. And I don't want to not have I don't want to not have adventures. I don't want to lead a boring life. I've been up here. I've had more fucking adventure up here by mistake than most people have in a lifetime. Just stranded in Grangeville for 5 days. Met all sorts of fucking crazy people by just walking around the town and introducing myself to people. Grangeville, Idaho, population like 2,000. I fucking drove a car cross country through the biggest snowstorm in the history of America. Like on a whim, literally on a moment's notice. Like, I got fucking the next day, I flew down to fucking Phoenix, picked up a car, drove it right through Texas, through that crazy blizzard. Like, I'm not gonna, I fucking go to this town that's 52 miles, it's a 52-mile dirt road further into the middle of nowhere from where I already live. And, like, just the fact that I moved to McCall is fucking adventurous. So, people have asked me, like, oh, you don't want to go back to New York because, oh, you're afraid, like, it'll draw you back. And it's like, I'm done. I did it. I lived there for 27 years, minus the time I spent in London. It's like, that's enough. I had it. I did it. I was successful. I started a successful business. Like, I don't want to live there anymore. And if I don't want to live it, why should I go back there? I don't want to go fuck my ex-girlfriend. Why do I want to go back to New York? I'll go back to New York when there's something I want to do in New York. But what I don't want to do is fucking go oversee the Pie Tasters cruise. Or, like, I want to go to the H2O shows. No offense to Pie Tasters. I love them. They're one of my favorite bands. And I love that I get to be able to work with them. And I do love them. And I wish the Pie Tasters show was a day away. Maybe I will stay for a week. I don't know. But I don't want to go to Dave Blend's wedding either. And I don't like weddings. Weddings give me fucking incredible social anxiety. And then some friends have told me, like, oh, this one will be different. It's post-treatment. It'll be your homecoming in New York. I don't want it. I want to be in Yellow Pine that weekend, working behind the bar at the Yellow Pine Tavern. That's what I want to be doing. And I want to be writing. I don't want to fly anywhere. Next time I fly somewhere, I don't want it to be, I don't know that I want to see friends. I want my friends to fly to me. Get on a fucking plane and come to McCall, like, if you want to see me. That's my attitude now, because I live my whole life in service of other friends. I was talking to Max Dawson last week when I was walking around, and I gotta say, Max made me fucking cry when I was out there walking on the trail, because in that winter when I was out there in Suicidal, it was winter 2018, I stayed with Jono for a few months, and then I was like, he had so graciously let me stay in his house in the Hollywood Hills. But then Max was like, hey, if you want to come stay out here for a while in Topanga, Max was like, if you want to come stay at my house? I bought this 4-bedroom house at the top of a hill in Topanga, crazy views. And I was like, yeah, man, why don't I'll come stay with you for a few months. And I first got there, and I got there on like December 23rd or maybe 24th. Max will know for sure, I'm sure. Max is a guy I had met at Wetlands through the Disco Biscuit scene in the 90s, and we had developed a very wonderful and special friendship. And I was like, yeah, I'll come live with you for a few months. That'll be cool. It's the whole point of staying out here in LA. And I was very despondent, but was hiding it from everybody. And I went out to take care of Max's cats, because he was going out to, like, Palm Springs with his girlfriend to spend Christmas with her and her family. And I think he made it as far as like Santa Monica or something, and he got a flat tire and went to change the tire, got in a fight with his girlfriend, and then she told him not to come, and then they basically broke up, like on Christmas Eve, and then he shows up back at the house, and I was like, what are you doing here? And he was like, a wreck. And then the next day I was going to Toby's house for Christmas, and I invited Max to come along, and I spent that winter, a good part of that winter, kind of like taking care of Max and helping mend his broken heart and being his support network for him. And he said to me the other day, like, he was like, I've always loved you, but looking back at that time and not understanding what you were going through and not realizing it because you wouldn't let anyone in, but like you were going through one of the most horrible experiences anyone could, being completely suicidal and all that, but that whole time you did everything you could to lift me up, and you made it all about me. And I said to Max, I was like, well, that was by design, of course, because by worrying about you and making what we're talking about your problems and let's watch a funny movie, that was what was helping me because it was giving me a reason to live and something to focus on other than my own demons. But Max was like, for that reason and a million others, I've never met anyone with such generosity of spirit as you. And I believed him, and that's what made me cry. I didn't feel like he was blowing smoke up my ass. And it's like that. I have always done so much for my friends. And I keep getting messages, come here, come stay here, come to New York. I can't wait to see you. When you come back to New York, I'll see you. You come here, motherfucker, because as much as I love my friends and I need my friends, I don't really miss my friends, to be honest. And that's the truth, is like, I am so comfortable in my own skin, in my own head most of the time, that I just want to be here in Idaho. I don't want to go anywhere. And I'm going to go to H2O because I'm going to make a lot of money on those shows. And Toby is an incredibly special friend and one who looked after me, of course, when I was in my deepest problems and made sure I got where I needed to go. And is like, he's been, there's a lot of reasons I'm going to be there for those H2O shows. And I do need to go back at some point, so that's what I'm going to go back for. And now that Frank Turner just happens to be the same weekend, it's perfect. Clean out my storage space. I'm going to come right back out here. Like, I want to live in Yellow Pine. I want to live in a population of 32 people. I'm hoping I can live there this winter. I'm hoping that works out. I went for a big run today, and all I could think about the whole time was like, I found my fucking Shining, right? I found my Sterling Hotel. I found my winter up in a fucking really weird, deserted, bizarro town. So I'm hoping I get to keep, here's what my life would look like this winter. The town shuts down. The 32 residents that live there full time are just sealed in with only one road in or out. It's that one 15-mile dirt road that gets paved that then connects to another 50-mile fucking paved road, single-lane paved road that lets out near Cascade, Idaho, which is a disgusting town between here and Boise. Total meth town. And that's going to be my, link back to fucking society. That'll be the closest place where I can go to a grocery store, disgusting grocery store called D9. That's what I want my winter to be. I want it to be complete solitude. That's where I'm gonna go. That's where I'll write my book. Both the one about my time this summer in Yellow Pine when it's relatively bustling, and the one about my life. And that's what I want. I don't want to book shows. I say all this, and my plan right now is to book a really big 20th anniversary cruise season next year for Rocks Off, because it will be our 20th anniversary, and that will likely be my swan song as far as concerts go, because I just don't get joy out of them. I don't get joy out of booking them. I was dealing with some shit today for Electric Six, and it was giving me some sort of agita. It was giving me the energy I need to project and bring inside of me and put back out to do this kind of work is not a healthy energy for me. And it's not an energy I want to live with in my body at all times. I want to do something different. I don't want to be the 60-year-old concert promoter. I don't want to be a 50-year-old concert promoter. I'm a 47-year-old man right now who has been basically working in one facet or another for 35 years. I started my mobile DJ business when I was fucking 12 years old. So I'm just doing kids' birthday parties, and I had 2 turntables and an amp and some speakers and doing birthday parties in people's backyards. And then I graduated to my junior high dances. So in one way or another, I've been working in rock and roll for 35 fucking years. And it's that's enough. I wish I had retirement, right? I wish I had retirement money. If I did, I'd buy the Yellow Pine Tavern, but I don't. I'm broke. But do I want to make another fortune in rock and roll? Not really. I don't have any interest in it. I want to make as much as I can next year for a 20th anniversary. I want to give the cruise season one more kind of cap off. What am I saying? I don't even want that. You know what I want? I want all these bands that I've worked with forever to come play one more time to help me make some money. The money that I should have saved. That's the fucking raw honesty of it. Will I have a good time doing one more season? I think I will. I probably will. If I really felt that I wouldn't have a good time, then I absolutely wouldn't do it. But I feel like I've banked up so much goodwill and karma in the rock and roll business that I can get a lot of people to play, a lot of people who will sell out our boats to play and say, hey, one last time, I'm not going to call it our farewell, because I think I'll still do certain shows every year on the boats and let other promoters use them. But, like, I want to let other promoters use them. I want to let CEG do boats and let the guys at Scenic do boats. And then I want to do the bands that I do every year. I want to do the Slackers and Electric Six and Murphy's Law and, like, maybe do 20 of my own shows and make 20 grand a year, you know, from the boats. And then do other things. But I don't want to push that rock uphill. I don't want it to be the Sisyphean effort. Sisyphus! The guy who, in Greek mythology, pushed the rock up the hill and it kept falling back on him. He had to exert more and more energy to just keep it from rolling over him and killing him. But he could never really get it to the top of the hill. Like, that's what the Rocks Off Cruise series feels like. And I don't want to do that for the rest of my life. And I want to do other things. And I want to live in Idaho. I'm a fucking Idahoan, you know? That said, anything could happen. You know what I mean? You want to offer me a job in New York for $250 grand a year, I'll come back. But you know what I learned is, like, when you make $250 grand a year at a job and they tax you and you can't, like, write off expenses and all that, when it's just straight, like, when they take the taxes out of your paycheck, it's not nearly as much as it sounds. That was one of the craziest things that I learned with the New York taxes and federal taxes and all that, was like, a salaried $250,000 a year job is not crazy money if you're trying to live in New York City, and, like, it's crazy money for me, a single guy that didn't have a lot of expenses. But, like, then I would think to myself, like, all right, so I'm like some dude and I'm making this money and I'm married and I've got 2 kids, 3 kids. Like, how do I pay for a fucking 4-bedroom apartment to have these kids in and a good neighborhood and pay for private school? Like, you don't at $250 grand a year. Like, I had just thought, I'm like, if you make $250 grand a year, you're rich. I think you got to make like $700 grand a year to even be considered close to rich in Manhattan, which is yet another reason I'm like, who the fuck wants to go back there and, like, work hard enough to maintain even decent lifestyle? No thanks, I'm not interested. You think I went an hour yet? I'm gonna look. Because even though it doesn't matter, it kind of does to me, because I want to give people value for what they're not paying for. I went an hour and 11 minutes. Should I talk about some more stuff? I made more notes. Billionaires in space, that's one of my notes. I already ranted about this. Like, apparently Richard Branson went to space this weekend. No, he didn't. He went on a very high airplane flight. He did not go to space. Would you people stop saying he went to outer space? And by you people, I don't mean on the listeners. I mean the fucking media. You didn't go to outer space until you went to the fucking moon. And you know who sent someone to the moon? You know who went to the moon? We did, but you know who went before? It was a fucking communist country. Literally 60 years ago. Russia was the first fucking people to send someone to the moon. They sent that dog to the moon, right? Sputnik or whatever. Laika was the dog. Sputnik was the rocket that it flew in. And, like, that was fucking outer space. So why is it such a big deal that a billionaire made a rocket that goes to outer space 60 years after a communist country already did it? Because it's a fucking capitalist? That is so weird to me. Why do we care? Why are we cheering this on as a society? Why are Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and Richard Branson, who arguably is the fucking by far the coolest of any of these guys because he's done shit in rock and roll, Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk just seem to be fucking jerk-offs. Like, very smart, capable, accomplished jerk-offs. You know, and Elon Musk, if you read deep into what this guy's done, he didn't start Tesla. He kind of fucking stole it. He wrestled control of it from somebody else. So why are these people cool? Like, why are we celebrating them? I don't fucking understand. And I certainly don't understand why we think it's cool if they're going to outer space. Like, the whole fucking point, this is some cartoon villain shit. Like, these guys are raping the earth and fucking pushing other people down. Amazon, read about Amazon workers. They're not doing well, you know? They're pissing in bottles and fucking on their feet 60 hours a week and not allowed to take breaks. Like, that guy is now trying to fly 62 miles above the fucking Earth's surface. They're trying to get the fuck out of here. Don't you understand? They set the Earth on fire, literally and figuratively, and now they're trying to get the fuck out of here. It's some Snidely Whiplash shit, and we're cheering them. We should be fucking throwing our grappling hooks, like our bat chains, up to wrap around their rocket and pull them back fucking down. We should be burying those motherfuckers, not sending them up into orbit. We should be making them pay for their sins against society and humanity, not fucking cheering for them. If anything, we should stick their fucking faces in the toilet and give them a swirly. Can't do that to fucking Bezos because he doesn't have any goddamn hair. He's fucking Lex Luthor, like the real life version of Lex Luthor, and now he's trying to build his own fucking crystal palace in outer space like Superman's parents. and we're cheering it. We're cheering it on. It's completely fucking ridiculous. Like, these people should all be getting the fucking guillotine. Speaking of guillotines, Conor McGregor pulled guard against Dustin Poirier this weekend at UFC 264 and put him in a guillotine, which Dustin then shifted his body to Conor's left because Conor had him in the guillotine with the right arm and negated that tactic, and Conor McGregor lost his big return fight, and there was not a bigger Conor McGregor fan on this planet in 2016 when he beat Eddie Alvarez to become the first dual weight class champion in UFC history. I was at Madison Square Garden with an $1,100 seat, not StubHub, not via GoGo, but I bought an $1,100 face value seat to that event because I loved Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor has a fucking incredible story. He was a plumber's apprentice. He was on welfare. He was training mixed martial arts and boxing in Ireland, in Dublin, living in a housing project in Dublin, in the 12th ward of Dublin. That's why he named his whiskey company Proper 12. And he fucking literally fought his way out of that. And he had a big mouth, and he was cocky, but he was backing it up, and he was knocking people out, and he was training as hard as you need to train. And after that Eddie Alvarez fight, he bought into all the hype. And then the cartoon version of the villain of Conor McGregor took over and became the real life version. And it's been a fucking incredible fall from grace. He should have learned his lesson because he went and fought Nate Diaz, lost to Nate Diaz, then ended up having to train super hard for the rematch, and then beat Nate Diaz in the rematch in a brutal 5-round fight that went the distance, and he won in a very thin decision on the judges' scorecards. But ever since then, he went and fought Floyd Mayweather. He believed his own hype, like he would be a great boxer. Of course he wasn't, but he made $100 million in that fight. He started this whiskey company. He's making a fortune. Then the shit started happening, right? He smashed a guy's phone, punched a fucking old man in a bar in Dublin that's on video. Numerous sexual assault allegations against him, which nowadays, unfortunately, what does that mean? It's hard to say if someone's rich, because that's a tricky situation, right? Because obviously you have to take sexual assault seriously, but who knows if he did that or not? Like, because it's easy to make a case against someone and smear their name and maybe try to get a payoff. I'm not saying that that's what happened with these girls, but he's got enough other black marks against him where you're like, this is not a good dude. And he's married, and obviously, like, no one's going to make a sexual assault allegation against you that you raped them in a hotel room if you actually weren't even in the hotel room with them. So just the fact that this married dude was going into hotel rooms with other women while he was away from his wife is like, you know, privately, that's like, obviously it shows fucking bad judgment, so much bad judgment. But he got fucking stomped this weekend, and I was the biggest fan back then. I loved him. I loved his whole rise. And do we build up our heroes to want to see them fall? Not really, but sometimes if they're falling on their own accord, like, I want my heroes to stay heroes. I want them to stay heroes forever. Anderson Silva, one of my heroes. George St. Pierre, one of my heroes. Those are the two mixed martial artists that I have tattoos from. They're my heroes. They've pretty much stayed heroes. Fucking Anderson Silva just put a whooping on Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. in a boxing match. First MMA guy to fight a pro boxer and actually fucking come out winning. George St. Pierre, retired because of too many steroids in the sport, comes back, defeats Michael Bisping. I was there, 4th row, Madison Square Garden, UFC 2017. Maybe it was 18. But I was there for that one. Crazy fucking fight. Then George retired again. He's still on top. I want my heroes to stay on top. But when my hero turns out to be a guy who's full of shit, do I want to see them fall? Absolutely. Because I don't want to see that story play out where someone can become your hero and then everything they do, you're going to ride their nuts for. No, Conor McGregor has become a fucking jerk. Seems like he doesn't seem like a good person. And he seems to have really lost his way. And I wanted to see him lose this fight because it was a fight against Dustin Poirier. And Dustin Poirier has over the years become a hero, has an amazing foundation. And the thing that did it for me was I knew Conor was like, a lot of the trash talk was to just build up fights and sell fights. Then he lost to Khabib Nurmagomedov, and was talking all sorts of shit about him and his religion and his father, and then Khabib almost fucking murdered him, and then ended up jumping out of the octagon and beating up his teammates, and it was a real mess. And Conor just got just big mouth caused all of that to happen, and then he went and, he beat up Cowboy Cerrone, which was a totally washed over the hill Cowboy Cerrone. They just fed him because they knew he needed to get a win. And then he fought Dustin Poirier, and he was very kind to him in the lead up to the fight, and you kind of thought it was a new Conor McGregor who was going to stop trash talking and had realized hey, I got to get back to being a mixed martial artist. And he said leading into that fight, he was like, hey, thanks for taking this fight, Dustin. I don't want to have trash talk in this. Let's fight like men, like mixed martial artists. Let's keep it above board. And I'm going to donate. I love what you're doing with your charity. I'm going to donate $500,000 to your Good Fight Foundation charity so you can build a gym for kids to learn mixed martial arts in Lafayette, Louisiana, where you're from. And that was everyone in the mixed martial arts world was that was so cool. Then the fight comes, it happens, they don't do any trash talk in the lead up. In fact, it was very bizarre that they were being so polite and sportsmanlike to one another. More that Conor was, because Dustin's always pretty polite. And Dustin knocked his fucking ass out, and it was brutal, and it was rough, and he was nailing him with these calf kicks. And the whole reason he was able to nail him with these calf kicks is because Conor stopped training. He wasn't in the gym with a hardcore team. The sport evolves, and it evolves very quickly, and calf kicks have become a thing. And if you can kick a guy a couple times on the calf, you can shut that muscle down, and the guy won't be able to walk on it. And that's what happened to Conor. And once he shut that calf down and Conor couldn't really get his footing, Dustin put a whooping on him, knocked him out. Highlight knockout reel. Conor was just asleep against the cage, and everyone photoshopped these images of him with a blanket on him while he was knocked out, and little Lion King images, and it was so cute. And then they decided to book a rematch, and right around the time they decided to book the rematch, Dustin was giving an interview, and one of the reporters was like, did you ever get that $500,000 donation from Conor? And Dustin was like, no, we didn't. We've sent emails to his reps, fucking sent multiple emails, texts. I've sent him text messages, DMs, just no reply. So I guess he's not going to give the money. It is what it is. He didn't trash talk him. He just answered a question, said, I guess it is what it is. We're not going to get that money, but I'm looking forward to the rematch, and we're going to fight. Conor went fucking ballistic because he got called out, which is obviously the sign of someone who's wildly insecure. And the way Conor handled it was Dustin's charity is bullshit. He fucking steals all that money and just pays it all to himself as salary and doesn't actually do the work for the kids. And dude, you can't fucking say that, because every nonprofit in America is required to make all of their fucking financial statements public. So, of course, reporters immediately went and dug up Dustin Poirier's Good Fight Foundation financials and saw that neither him and his wife, who run the charity, have ever taken a fucking nickel in salary. They haven't paid anyone's salary. 100% of the money they've taken in donations has gone back out the door to help the community. And so then Conor, feeling extra fucking chastened and made to look like a fucking dickhead that he is, went and donated $500,000 to the Boys and Girls Club of Lafayette, Louisiana, who probably have huge payrolls. And the money won't go to where it was going to go if it got donated to Dustin. And that's when the wheels fucking came off, and everybody basically turned against Conor. The only people who like Conor McGregor now are kind of pieces of shit. And the second fight came, and Conor started talking more shit, was talking shit about Dustin's wife, saying he was going to murder him, he'd never see his wife and family again, he was going to kill him in the octagon. And that's, you say you're going to knock someone out, you're going to make them retire, you're going to hurt them so bad they never want to fight again. But you got to really stop short of saying you're going to murder somebody, because it's a sport where you could murder somebody. Brain trauma is very real. And that just didn't win him any fans. And so it ended up happening is Dustin fucking put a whipping on him in this fight for one full round, just kicking the shit out of him to the point where most MMA rounds are scored 10-9 for the winner. It's called a 10-point must system, and the winner of a round gets 10 points. The loser of the round gets 9 or less. But you almost never see a 10-8 round. For it to be a 10-8 round, you needed to really be dominating the fuck out of your opponent. And 2 of the judges gave the first round 10-8 to Dustin, and one judge gave it 10-9. But what happened was, apparently Conor tried to kick Dustin at one point, and Dustin lifted his leg and rolled it to the outside to check the kick, meaning to take the kick on his shin as opposed to on this calf muscle or thigh, so that it wouldn't do any damage. And apparently when he checked the kick against Conor, it gave a little fracture to his fib, the two bones in your shin bones, basically. And then at the end of the round, with like 8 seconds left or something, Conor tried to throw a left at Dustin, and like the way he twisted his ankle to put the power into it, snapped his foot, completely snapped it, snapped his fucking shin, and the whole thing folded under him. Oh, it was so disgusting. Oh, it was so bad. But it's like, Conor fell down screaming in pain. Dustin punched him a few times and the round ended, and Conor couldn't continue. And then Conor starts screaming at him from laying against the cage when Dustin's trying to give his victory speech. Conor screaming, I saw the footage last night, I'm going to fucking come and kill you and your wife in the middle of the night. You're not going to see it coming, and doing the gun to the head, fucking holding your hand. And it's like, holy Christ, bro. Like, mask off. Nobody likes you anymore. It's over. You need a fucking serious image makeover rehab. You got to be kissing babies in a fucking cancer ward. You got to give all your money away. You got to do something, man. Because Conor McGregor, you're officially a piece of shit. You've lost all your fans, and it's so sad. But like, come on, man. You got to get it together. I can only imagine there's tons of fucking cocaine he was doing that led him into that, like buying his own hype over the years. I guess the last thing I want to say in this podcast this week is my little note here. I don't have a lot of notes. I don't make a lot of notes. You ever want to see my notes? Here they are. If you're just listening to this podcast, why don't you watch it on YouTube? That's what I'm asking right now. I started doing this one on video. First bunch of videos got like 50, 60, 70 views. The last bunch have only gotten in the 20s. Maybe because I haven't posted about it and like reminded people that it exists. I should do that. I barely post about this podcast. In case anyone's wondering, if anyone out there is wondering, we get between 150 and 200 people who listen to this podcast every week, which is not a lot, but it's also a fuck ton, considering that's like 100 to 150 more people than I ever thought would listen to this when I started it. So it's pretty fucking cool, and the messages I get are pretty fucking cool. And I hope today's message, maybe it resonated with people that like, don't do something for your whole life just because that's what you do and that's the career you got put into. And you might be backed into a corner because you might have a wife and kids or a husband and kids, and you're the breadwinner, and like you don't know what else to do. But like, you know, you can do something else. You know, I think one of the most important things to understand is you don't have to live in the lifestyle to which you become accustomed, which is the whole point of palimony and alimony, right? But like I've changed my lifestyle so massively, and it's been so worthwhile, because I used to say this a lot on the podcast, and I think I don't anymore, but it's like the pandemic, coming out of treatment and being pretty much broke and not knowing how long, I had a few $1,000s left. And I was like, how am I going to like pay for things? How am I going to make it till our first show where I can make some money? And then I had a show with Tim Barry in February. Then early March, I had one with Mike Farris, and I made a few bucks at each of those that were going to get me to our first boat show with Major Lazer, where I was going to make like $8,000. And I was like, all right, if I can get to there, but I had to really think about every penny I spent, and that's something I still do. And I've learned the difference between wants and needs. And if you want to change your life, if you need to change your life, and you don't know how to do it because with your salary, you're locked into a house and a mortgage and your kids and the private school. It's like, well, you don't have to take them to private school. Well, you don't have to live in that house. Oh, I can't afford to sell the house because it's not worth as much as it was. Well, you can afford to rent it. Use the rent to pay your mortgage, and then rent an apartment. Move your family into a 1-bedroom apartment. I don't know. There's ways around it, is what I'm saying. You don't have to be stuck where you are because you think that you need to keep living your life like the way you're living it. Because if you keep living your life the way you're living it and you're miserable, like, you're going to only get more and more miserable. Like, you're not going to get incrementally less miserable the more you continue to do shit that makes you miserable, right? Unless you're filling your life. You know, if you can't change your job and you hate your job, well, you got to pick up a hobby. And if you're too tired after work to pick up a hobby, well, then that's just a fucking excuse, because everyone gets tired, of course. But, you know, you gotta will it into a better place. But one of the things, the last note I made this week said, let it go and you'll get it all. And 2 weeks ago, before my first weekend in Yellow Pine, there was that Friday night, and I went to the show. the organ trio show, and I've been really trying to make friends in McCall, and very half-heartedly was I trying to date. Continuing, that continues to this day. But I was like, I'm gonna go to this music show, and then I was like, it's gonna be chicks there. Maybe I'll meet a chick, you know. And then I got there and I set up my chair, and Shanti and Ever were supposed to come with me, but they ended up traveling in a separate vehicle, so I was just there myself. And like, turned out the guy doing sound was the old man from the farm, so I knew him. And then I had met another guy who was one of the guys putting the show on from the, they call it the McCall Folklore Society. So he came over, and then he introduced me to his partner, and they do this little festival up here called Roseberry. So before long, I was like chatting with a bunch of people, and then this dude Tyler, who I'd done some construction work for, he was there. I started chatting with him, and then this dude Joe, who's got his girlfriend Olivia, who used to live in this house that I live in now. They came by, and Olivia sometimes babysits forever, so I kind of become friendly with them. And I had like reached out to her one day. Like, I was cooking dinner one day, and I went and left dinner in her car for her in Tupperware, and I left it on the seat with a nice note. And then the next time she came back was like, because we had been talking, and she was studying for finals for her college. So I was like, hey, like, this is dinner for you and Joe. Like, you've been babysitting all day. I wrote all this on the note. It was like, you know, you don't have to go home and make dinner. Like, I wanted to make dinner for you. And then she came back the next time. I was like, that was so kind of you. And I was like, oh, thanks. You know, like, I'm happy to help out. And like, you know, hey, if you and Joe, like, I was like, I've been trying to make friends, and it doesn't seem to be working. It's going very slow. If you and Joe, like, ever want to invite me over for dinner, I would love that. And I don't mean to invite myself, but I'm just trying to meet people, and like, I only ever see you when you're here babysitting. And she was like, yeah, fuck yeah. And then a couple weeks went by, she didn't invite me. And then one day she was like, oh, I'd love to invite you, but I don't know. And then she was like, maybe next Sunday. And I was like, yeah, next Sunday should work. And then next Sunday came, and at like 5 p.m. she's like, you coming over for dinner? And I was like, I didn't know you meant next Sunday for sure. I said I should work. And you never texted me back, so I bailed, and then they haven't invited me back. And I'm like, fuck, you know, like, maybe I'm not good at making friends. But then they showed up, and then, like, Joe introduced me to his sister, and I was, like, talking to her, and she was really cool. But before that happened, before Joe showed up, and Olivia, who, hopefully they'll invite me back, but, like, I was just kind of sitting there in my chair, and I talked to some other people, and, like, the show was getting ready to start, and I was looking around, and I had this moment where I was like, I was looking at the girls who showed up, and I was like, if I'm ever going to meet a girl in McCall, they're probably going to come to this show, because it was a cool funk band. It wasn't a bluegrass show. And I was like, if I'm going to meet a girl, if I'm going to end up smashing again or banging some chick, she will be at this show tonight. And I was looking around, and I was like, I'm certainly not interested in banging any of these chicks. And I was like, and that's fine. Because I don't really want to bang chicks. And I don't know if I've said this before on this podcast, but, like, I miss making love. I wouldn't mind a fucking jerk off or a blowjob. But, like, I don't drink. I'm not going to go hang out at bars. Not unless I'm working at them, which apparently I do now. But I'm not, like, I'm not going to meet a chick that way to just, like, fuck. And I'm not going to meet a chick on a dating app. No, I'm not going to do it in Boise. I'm not going to do it here. The few times I've tried that, it's just, that's not my vibe. I'll meet someone in person. But, like, I don't want to meet someone to just fuck. I want to make love to somebody. I want to, like, but I don't know that I can, like, have a girlfriend. The complications of that are, like, you got to, like, be present for them all the time. And, like, I don't want to be, like, I can't be with some girl who's like, we got to hang out 3 times a week. Like, that's certainly never going to work. So I just I've resigned myself to the fact that I'm not going to find that, and it's fine. And I'm not yearning for it. And there's something about sitting there and looking out at that crowd and being like, I'm definitely never going to bang any of those chicks. And these people that I knew and that I was talking to, I'm not going to be friends with. Like, at the end of that night, Tyler was like, I'd met his girlfriend, and she was like asking me questions about where I came from, and I talked to Joe for a while, talked to his sister for a while. It was like, everything was cool. Tyler's girlfriend was like, they talked to these other guys, the guys who put on the Roseberry Festival, and by the end, one of them was drunk and introduced me to another guy. I don't want to talk to drunk people ever again in my life. And, at least not in any friendly capacity if I'm not making money. If I'm making money, I'll talk to anybody. So that's why I've always been able to put up with drunk people at my shows. If I'm at the Yellow Pine Tavern and someone's drunk, I don't give a fuck. Like, tip me. Cool. But, like, I was at that show as a personal enjoyment. And dude brings someone over to me and is like, this is Jake I told you about. He loves fish. Jake, this is so-and-so. He loves fish. And it's like, I've never once said to anybody in the fucking world that I love fish. Certainly not this guy. And his friend was like, what shows are you going to? And I was like, what? You mean here at this venue? Because the place where this band was playing, they were doing free shows every Tuesday all summer. And he was like, no. Like, what fish shows are you going to? And I was like, what? I'm not going to any fish shows. Like, I was so confused. And he was like, he just told me you love fish. And then his friend is like, I didn't say he loved fish. I said he books fish. And it's like, I've never booked fish either. I've booked shows with guys who are in fish, but like, fish gets booked by Live Nation. They play fucking stadiums. Like, what the fuck is going on here? Why are you people talking to me? Get away from me. That was my initial reaction. And I just turned and walked away. Then I'm talking to Tyler and his girlfriend, and then at the end of it, like, I've texted Tyler 5 times, like, hey man, you want to get a beer? Like, he texted me first. He was like, we should get a beer sometime. After I helped him with that construction, I was like, I'd love to get a beer. And then a couple nights later, he's like, hey, me and some of my river guide friends, we're gonna get a beer tonight at 7 o'clock at fucking McCall Brewing. You want to come? And I was like, yeah. And at like 6, he's like, oh, change of plans. We're going mountain biking. You want to come mountain biking? And I was like, absolutely not. Because I don't have a bicycle, but I could have borrowed one. But, like, I'm not going to go with a bunch of river guides, like, we're basically professional mountain bikers, and be the guy holding them up. So I was like, hey, thanks a lot, but I don't have a bicycle. But, like, I'd love to get beer sometime. And he's like, yeah, sure, we'll get beer sometime. And then texted him a couple weeks later, hey, get a beer. And I say beer, I don't mean beer. And then he's like, writes back, like, yeah, I'm really busy this week. Maybe another time. And then like a week after that, I was like, hey, I got all this meat in my freezer from Speakeasy Meats, which I'll get to in a minute, sponsor of this podcast. And he was like, I got all this meat in my freezer. If you want, I'll bring some down. I was like, my friend owns this fucking super boutique, awesome meat company. I was like, I'll bring some meat down. We can put it on the grill. Me and your girlfriend, or if you're having some other people over, I'll bring enough meat to feed everybody. Yeah, it'd be fucking awesome. Don't hear from him. 2 weeks later, sends me a text. Hey, I was just driving down Main Street, and I saw you walking down the street. I had just gotten some ice cream. And he's like, I'm headed out of town today for 5 days, but I'll hit you when we get back. We'll hang out. And I was like, okay. So we finally hang out at this show, but not because, like, we meant to hang out together. He went to the show, I went to the show. I actually texted him to tell him it was happening, like 3 days before it happened. And he writes back, like, yeah, me and my girl, we already bought tickets. I was like, oh. And in my head, I'm like, well, you could have invited me and been like, hey, me and my girl are going to the show. You should want to know about it. But he didn't, because he didn't think about me that way. He doesn't really want to be my friend. And that's the shit that was going through my head. And that's fine. Like, if you don't want to be my friend, I don't want to be your friend. But I don't want to be asking people to be friends. Certainly not more than once. You know, like, if I tell you that I want to be your friend, like, and you don't reply and say you're going to hang out with me. I met this other dude, said he was going to take me shooting. Run into him in town a few times. Yeah, I'm going to take you shooting. Crow, I'd love for you to take me shooting. Like, just waiting for you. And then not one weekend, he's like, hey, it turns out we're not shooting this weekend, but maybe next weekend I'll let you know. And it's like, oh, cool, let me know. You know? And I told him about something that was happening in Yellow Pine, because he said he'd always wanted to go there. So I told him about the strongman contest. Like, I'm not fucking chasing people anymore. That's part of the same reason I'm not going to New York. Like, if you want to hang out, if you're really my friend, fly out here. And, like, don't ask to stay here, because I don't want you to stay here. For the most part, if you're most of the people listening to this podcast, I would love to see you and hang out with you, but I don't want you staying here. I don't want anyone staying here, because I have a very small one-room house. And it's like, it's not going to be interesting to me. I would go camp with you somewhere, probably. Like, you want to go find a campsite? We'll hang out together, but I don't want you in my house. Because when I'm in my house, it's my house. And it's part of the reason I'm struggling about having a girlfriend. Or, like, meeting a woman. I don't know what it's going to be like. Like, I'm so into my own vibe and my own trip. And, like, sometimes I want to listen to a podcast before I go to sleep. Or I want to read with a headlamp on. None of that shit's sexy. And it's like, I don't want to fucking... Like, what if I wake up in the middle of the night, which I often do, to pee, and I can't get to sleep for a while? Then you're in my bed. Like, I don't know. All that, that's the kind of stuff that gives me anxiety. But, like, I probably don't want you in my house. But I do want you to come visit. And there are hotels to stay in McCall. But I don't want to be responsible for your happiness 24 hours a day if you're coming to stay with me. I want to be like, hey, let's go spend 4 or 5 fucking quality hours together. You go get lunch somewhere or whatever. Like, let's recharge. I'll go back to my house. Then we'll meet up around sunset and go for a dip in the lake or whatever. That's the kind of interactions I want to have with my friends now. But what I'm getting at is, like, people... I was sitting there thinking all those things before the show even started. And like about how, like, you know what, maybe I won't make friends up here in McCall, and that's cool. And you know what, totally fine with that. And like, because if I've tried making friends and putting myself out there, and like people aren't, they're not responsive. And then I get it. I get it for a lot of reasons. I showed up here looking for a new life. They've all established their lives. And not everybody's looking for a new person to come into their life. And most people here are in relationships, and Tyler's in a relationship with this girl. But where I was getting with that, it was at the end of the night, and this girl's like asking me all these questions. Oh my God, you're so cool. Like, man, we should hang out sometime, me and Tyler. And then Tyler comes over. He's like, man, we got to hang out more often. He was kind of drunk, and he said that to me, and I was like, Tyler, we've never fucking hung out. Like, every time you've asked me, you've said you were going to ask me to. You actually didn't ask me to. I'm like, you keep saying we're going to get a beer, so we should hang out once. And he's like, we're hanging out right now. It was like, only because we ran into each other, not because you asked me to. And it was kind of a dick thing to say, but it was true. And then his girlfriend was like, yeah, that's true. Tyler, you've said we should hang out with this guy. How come we don't invite him to hang out? And I was like, yeah, exactly. Whatever your name is, Sam. You should invite me to hang out sometime. Like, I fucking love to hang out. You just got to ask me. I'm not going to keep asking you guys. And I haven't heard from them since, you know? And that was the end of the night, but it was the beginning of the night when I was like looking around, like, I kind of know that guy, I know that guy, I know that guy, I know Tyler, know this guy. And I was like, I know Joe, I know Olivia, now, you know, I know his sister. I'm like, okay, this is all cool. But I thought to myself, like, I was like, I don't need friends. I don't need to make friends out here. I don't want to make friends. Making friends is like making romantic partners. It just fucking happens when you least expect it. And I literally was sitting there and I said to myself, like, I'm not gonna have romantic partners out here. It's just not gonna happen. And if it does happen, it's gonna happen like that. I'm gonna meet someone and it's gonna be like, well, holy fuck, I guess I like this girl. Wow. I'm not gonna find them on the other end of my phone. On a dating app, you know, I'm not gonna find them. Like, if I fucking meet some chick that I want to bang, then I'm gonna meet her at the grocery store and I'm gonna be like, excuse me, is this melon soft? But not because I'm trying to talk to her. I don't think I'm gonna meet a chick by like seeing her and being like, I gotta figure out a way to talk to this chick. I'm gonna meet a chick because it's just gonna like happen. She's gonna walk into my bar. Or I'm going to be at the grocery store and we're going to bump our carts into each other. Like some fucking rom-com. Like, that's how it's going to happen. Or someone's going to invite me out to get some drinks and then someone else is going to be there. But it's not going to happen from me swiping right on Bumble or Tinder or anything like that. So I was so at peace with this before anything got going at the show. It was just like, and of course, all these fucking things, they happen. They take me 10 minutes to get out and make sense of. But they're all going to happen... they all happen in my brain in a matter of moments. And I was sitting there and I was like, I don't know. I don't know. Like, I'm not going to meet, I guess I'm not going to make friends, and that's fine. And I'm certainly not going to make a romantic acquaintance, and that's totally fine, especially looking at these chicks that showed up. And they weren't not good looking. They just, none of them were my type. Not one, not in the slightest bit. And I was like, okay, cool. Well, that's fine. And then I was like, now I can just hang out and like not worry about it. And then later on, I ended up meeting someone at the show, and now we've become buds. And we had fucking lunch and went swimming in the river 2 weeks ago. And I was like, this is cool. Oh, fuck. And it was because I was sitting there being like, I don't want any of this. It's not going to happen, and I don't care. And it was almost instantaneous that it's like, well, holy fuck, I made a friend. Like, weird. And now I'm fucking taking off in a Yellow Pine every week. So it's like, you know, who knows what's going to happen? Are we going to stay friends? I don't know. Probably. Hopefully. Maybe. But, like, I honestly don't know. But I don't care. And I don't care because nothing matters. Like, nothing really matters. That's what I meant to say. And I said that the other day in the context of something. I don't remember what it was, but it was like, it doesn't matter if I go, like, it was about going to shows and stuff. And like, I was talking about how I miss stand-up comedy, and like, maybe I'll see some stand-up comedy. Turns out I'm basically performing stand-up comedy now at the Yellow Pine Tavern and witnessing tons of it unintentionally. But the thing I miss is stand-up comedy. But like, do I miss it? Like, does it matter if I see Sturgill Simpson at the Webster Hall? Does it matter if someone texts me to hang out and be friends? Like, none of it really matters. It doesn't really matter. because more things are just going to happen tomorrow or the next day or whatever. And like, do I want cool things to happen? And when cool things happen, do I want more of those cool things to happen? Like, absolutely. But if you obsess over it, it's like waking up and trying to remember your dream. Like, the harder you try to hold on to what happened in that dream, the more elusive it becomes. So the harder you try to hold on to anything, whether it's a friendship, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a fucking job, the harder that shit becomes. Like, the harder you, like, you remember in gym class when you climbed a rope and they told you when you're at the top, like, you kind of got to use your feet for friction because you're going to slide down. But if you try to hold that rope really tight, it's going to burn the fuck out of the inside of your hands. And that's what happens. And that's the lesson of life. And that's why that note today I wrote said, let it go and you'll get it all. And it's also, if you love something, set it free. I was talking to a friend about a relationship, and he had called me and he said one of his relationships, his current relationship, is a lot like one that he had seen me in previously. And he was like, how did you manage and handle the situation? And I was like, in the end, I let her go. And I realized, like, you let her go, and if it's meant to be, if you love something, set it free. If it comes back to you, it's yours. If it never comes back, it wasn't yours to begin with. And I told him about this particular relationship was the last one I was in, and her and I were actually super close friends now, as close as we've ever been. I wouldn't say closer, because we don't fuck anymore, but as close emotionally and spiritually as we've ever been. And it took a long time. I let her go. She ended up getting together with another guy who I knew, and it bummed me out a little, but not a lot, because I knew our relationship had run its course. And that's why one day I said to her, I went to her and I was like, I don't think this is working anymore. Like, do you just feel like this isn't working? We're just kind of like best friends now. She was like, oh my God, yes, I feel the same way. I was thinking about it, but like, I didn't want to say anything because I wasn't sure, but like, you just saying that is a huge relief. And I was like, well, let's just go back to being friends. Like, we were best friends before we were together. So like, let's just be friends. And then eventually it took years, but now we're friends again, and we talk on the phone all the time, and more often than we did towards the end of our relationship. And it's like, this is great. And I let that go, and it came back to me. It came back to me in a different way, but now it's mine. It's one of my most treasured friendships. And that's everything in life. Let your money go. I let my money go. Is it going to come back to me? I don't know. But if it doesn't come back to me, maybe I'm meant to live poor. And that'll be fine too. Or like, not even poor, but not of much means. And that's cool, because nothing I want costs that much money. Like, I want to go on some more vacations. I certainly do. And I think I'll savor them in a way I didn't when I was depressed or just felt like I was in search of something. Like, I think I'll go with a different outlook. I want to go back to Asia. I want to go back to Thailand, especially, and Myanmar. And I want to do more traveling through South America. But you know where I don't want to go? Anywhere that's expensive on purpose. I don't want to go to expensive restaurants. I don't want to go stay in expensive hotels. Give me the shittiest fucking place you got, man. Let me sleep in a tent somewhere. That's the kind of stuff I want to experience. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just do what I want, right? We'll see what we do for the 20th anniversary of Rocks Off next year. Like, I don't know that I want to do it. I don't, if I want to do it, I'll do it. Does anyone else want to do it? Anyone want to rent my boat and throw shows? You want to be a promoter? I'll fucking coach you. I'm going to offer promoter consultancy. Maybe I'll put that on my website moving forward. I would love to. I'll fucking talk to you for 4 hours. You pay me $5,000. You're opening a music venue, I'll come see it. I'll tell you how to lay it out. Rocks Off Consulting. There we go. If you know anyone looking to get into the live music business, wants to book shows, you want to hire me to be a consultant for $500 an hour, I'm in. Happy to help you out. But I don't know. I don't want to be the guy. Like, I'm not that guy anymore. That's just what it is. I don't care. I don't listen to new music in the way I used to. I'm not trying to find out who the hot, young, cool, hip bands are. But when I actually listen to more new music now than I did for years. But I'm not trying to listen to new music because I'm trying to find out what to book. I'm just listening to new music because I want to love music. And I want to go to a show and love that show for that show, and not because I don't want to go back to shows in New York where I know everything about the venue. And I'm like, oh, if I was putting on this show, it would be different. Part of why I love stand-up comedy so much is because I never worked in stand-up comedy. And then I almost did right before I went nuts. Me and Shapiro were about to buy Dangerfield's Comedy Club, and we were working on it when I went crazy. And then when I came out, we were still working on it, and we were about to do it. And the pandemic came, and that shut that whole idea down. And I'm kind of glad it didn't work, because I don't want to be in the stand-up comedy business, I don't think, I probably do. I would. I would if it came back around. But I'm kind of glad it didn't, because being in the rock and roll business for so long ruined me for a lot of aspects of rock and roll. And it's hard to go to a show and just enjoy a show for its own merits instead of thinking about the time I almost got a chance to book that band, or I wonder who their agent is. I wonder why they're playing at this venue. Like, all those things creep into your head when that's what you've done for a living for so long. So I don't know, I don't know what's next. But I don't need to know what's next. That's the beauty. Like, something's going to be next. But the something that's next is going to be like the next friend I make, or the next girlfriend I make, or, if I end up with a romantic interest and make out with a chick, which I kind of want to do that too. But I don't want to just make out with some random chick at a bar, I don't think. I want the next chick I make out with and dry hump with or whatever to be like someone I'm fucking really into doing that with. I think. But I also kind of just want to fuck. But if I just want to fuck, I want to fuck some girl in a neutral location and be able to leave at a certain point. Like, I don't have a one-night stand that turns into a sleepover. That's what I don't want. That's what I'm talking about. So the idea of like a one-night stand is great if just it's like fucking bang and see you later. But I don't want it to be bang and then like let's talk about our feelings, because I don't want to talk about my feelings with you if I don't know you. I just want to bang you. I want you to, eat your pussy. You're like, oh yeah, this fucking guy made pussy so good I came twice and then never saw him again. Like, I want a girl who thinks like that to be a one-night stand with me. Not a girl who's like, oh, we just had great sex. I wonder what his favorite color is. You should ask me that before we had sex, because I'm leaving. I'm out. I just want to get out. But I let all that shit go. And now I'm making friends. Maybe I'll make a girlfriend at some point. Maybe I'll make a girlfriend up in Yellow Pond. That would be funny. But I don't really care, because nothing really matters. If I find a girlfriend or I don't find a girlfriend, if I continue these friendships that I'm starting to find or I don't, nothing really matters. Like, if this is supposed to continue, it will continue. And I'm just gonna live in the moments. I'm gonna live in all of these little moments that I have. And like, the last 2 weekends I was up in Yellow Pine, I barely texted with anyone while I was up there. I didn't look at fucking social media because when I left the tavern at the end of the night, I was going to a campsite where there was no Wi-Fi. And then when I got back, I was behind the bar. So it was like, and then I got back and there's fucking 200 messages from all sorts of different people and group texts and threads. And I'm like, I don't want to live. I missed those texts in the moment. And now I don't care. Like, that moment's over. And now I don't care about these texts because someone sent it to me 3 days ago. So whatever they were thinking about when they sent it to me, that's passed for them and it's passed for me. I don't want to catch up with anybody. Not in that way. I don't want to catch up electronically. If you want to catch up, let's talk on the phone. But I'm done with like replying to all these texts, and I'm done with feeling bad about it. And doesn't mean I don't want to talk to you or I don't want to be your friend, but I don't want to reply to a text that you sent on Saturday if it's now Tuesday. Or maybe I do, and I will. But for the most part, I just scroll through, look. Okay, cool. They're telling me something. Cool. All right, got it. Or I don't. Or I care or I don't. Nothing really matters. Nothing really matters. Freddie Mercury said it. Nothing else matters. James Hetfield said it. Give me some money. Spinal Tap said it. And speaking of giving me some money, I need some more money. So if you're getting shit out of this podcast, if you're listening to this podcast, if you're still listening to this podcast and you're still enjoying it, I mean, I think that's worth $1, don't you? So send me some money via Venmo at Jake-Sufnerowski on Venmo. Jake at rocksoft.com on PayPal. Mail me a check, P.O. Box 4116, McCall, Idaho 83638. Go to rocksoff.bigcartel.com and buy a McCallum t-shirt, which I can't sell in this town because the only town that sells touristy type of things told me they didn't like it. They didn't tell me they didn't like it. They just said we're not interested in selling it. And I was like, you could have just told me you didn't like it. Sent them an email, sent them a follow-up email, didn't reply to either. Then I fucking brought a shirt down there and left it for the owner with a nice note being like, if you'd like to sell this shirt in your shop, it's cute, I think, McComb. I'll take whatever kind of consignment deal you want. And then they finally replied to my email and they wrote, they didn't even tell me they weren't interested in selling it. They said, we're not accepting any consignment items at this time. You can come pick up the shirt you left for us. And it's like, just tell me you don't like it. Tell me you're not interested. Tell me you don't think it's a cool design, whatever. Or tell me, like, we want 10 of them. But, like, fuck you, 44 North in downtown McCall, Idaho. If you come to this town, don't buy anything from them, because they're obviously not good people. And anyone who wrongs me now, they're my mortal enemy. And I almost wrote back to them, and I was going to say, like, I almost wrote back and was like, I hope your fucking store burns down. I don't hope it burns down. I just hope no one shops there. I won't shop there. Much like I won't go back to Hometown Pizza because they slighted me. I won't go back to Ridley's because the guy wouldn't fucking show me where the bear spray was. He was just super rude to me, and it's very Curb Your Enthusiasm shit on my part. I know, and I think it's kind of funny that there's now 3 different places in this town that I won't ever go to again, because there's only like a dozen places in this town. But eventually I'll go back to those places. But what I'm getting at is I'm stuck with like 80 of these McComb t-shirts, because about 15 of you bought them from rocksoff.bigcartel.com. And another 5 of you I gave them to. Gave them to Greg, Shanti, a couple other friends. And now I want people to buy them. So please log on, buy one of my shirts, send me some money. Or, you know what? You know what would make me almost as happy as you sending me money? I'm just kidding. Nothing would. Is go to speakeasymeats.com. Adam Bauer's smoked meat company. Delicious fucking meats. And I've been giving away this promo code on there, and I kept telling you guys this promo code wasn't going to last, because it was 30% off if you use the promo code Jakey. And it's gone. You fucking missed it. If you didn't get your order in before the 4th of July, promo code Jakey for 30% off no longer applies. It wasn't going to last forever. This next promo code is not going to last forever, too. It's still Jakey, but now it's free shipping. And free shipping is expensive. I think it was like $25, so it'll save you $25. But would you order something? Adam Bauer, agent to the stars, agent to Steve Poltz, who wrote Jewel's hit, You Were Meant For Me. He wrote half of Jewel's first album, because Jewel was living in her car working at a coffee shop when they met. Steve was singing in a very famous band in San Diego anyway called the Rugburns, who are fucking fantastic. Look them up if you've never heard them. And they met. Jewel moved into Steve's house. They wrote the first album together. He wrote You Were Meant For Me, and I Was Meant For You. And great fucking song. And I hope Steve makes a lot of money off that. And I hope he shares it with Adam. But he obviously doesn't, because when the pandemic started, Adam started Speakeasy Meats and started smoking meat. He was on my podcast as a guest on the Fridays with Friends episode. You've heard me talk about how delicious his smoked meat is and how much I love putting Adam Bauer's smoked meat in my mouth, and how much Adam Bauer loves smoking meat himself. And I don't mean the kind of meat you smoke at a truck stop on the other side of a glory hole. I don't mean a lot lizard. I don't mean the kind of meat you smoke at the Pride Parade. I mean the kind of meat that you put on a smoker and you fire up some hickory fucking wood, and you let that wood burn or something, and then it goes through a compartment to somewhere else, and the smoke is what heats the chamber, not the fire. And so the meat gets a special flavor. If you want to know more about the ins and outs of smoking meat, you should go to the episode I recorded with Adam. But you should go to speakeasymeats.com. Get some pastrami brisket. Get some fucking hooey chicken. Get some cluck cluck wings. Get some fucking corned beef pastrami, hash, whatever the fuck. Buy one of everything. Buy one of only one thing. Buy some of his cool t-shirts and sweatshirts. But use the discount code Jakey for free shipping. Speakeasymeats.com. The one and only sponsor on this podcast, other than my own Venmo, my own PayPal, and my own rocksoff.bigcartel.com. Or come to a Rocks Off concert, because you'll have a good time, I swear to God, even if I don't care anymore. You'll have a good time. Come see Electric Six this Saturday in New York City. Boarding at 6 p.m. Boat sale 7 to 10 p.m. 3-hour cruise with Electric City and some opening band called Volk, some two-piece band that I don't know anything about. The band was supposed to be Speed Dealer, the opening band. And then 2 months ago, I got a text like, Speed Dealer, can't do it now. The opening band is Volk. You know how little I care about this concert? I didn't even click to see what Volk sounds like. I was like, if they're okay with Electric Six, they're okay with me. I don't really give a fuck. I don't give a fuck if you come to my shows. I don't give a fuck if I book more shows. I don't give a fuck if I go to more shows. All I give a fuck about is being here now, being in the moment, doing what the fuck I want to do, which helps me to live my optimal life. And I suggest you do the same. And if sending me money via Venmo helps you live your optimal life, I think you should do it every day. Be more like Stucky, who sends me $5 every week. Thank you, Stucky. Thank you, everybody who sent me money, but thank you for lending me your brain and your ear holes and your compassion, and for sending me notes and for sending me postcards. Keep sending me postcards. I'll keep sending them back. Tazimoto, you've sent me 2 that I haven't returned yet. But they both made me fucking smile. The last one I got literally on my way out to Yellow Pine last week. So more will be forthcoming. I'll be replying to people more than I have. Anyway, keep your feet on the ground. Keep reaching for the stars. Keep sleeping in the hammocks. Keep taking those dirt roads. Keep straightening them curves. Keep flattening them hills. Someday the mountain might get me, but the law never will.